Hey guys, welcome back to the TEG podcast. In light of the Avatar Last Airbender movie having come out, we're going to be talking about what makes a revival series good, and if the Last Airbender movie qualifies for that. To get this right out of the way, let's define what a revival even is, because it's not a reboot, it's not a sequel, and it's not a remake of something from the past. What it is it takes the original characters and story, and it adds to something that was either discontinued or concluded some point in the past, without any expectation of it happening again. To quote Screen Rant, they define it as a continuation of the same story, sometimes years later, after the events that story audiences are familiar with. In many cases, these projects are called revivals because there was either a concrete ending that came before, or there was little to no expectation among audiences that the series would ever be continued in the future. So this doesn't constitute all the live action remakes that have been happening, but it does constitute even sequels that are bringing back up things that we enjoyed in our childhood or even further in the past. So for us, we're going to be talking about this for Avatar, The Last Airbender, the Avatar Aang movie in 3 sections. Our first one is, what does it mean to be a revival for an Avatar Last Airbender series media? And does this one fulfill it? Does it do a good job of being an Avatar Last Airbender piece of media or story? The second part is, what does it mean to be a good revival in general? And does the Avatar Aang movie fit the bill? Then the last part is at the very end, we will say our general thoughts for the Avatar Aang movie. So this is not an overall review of Avatar Aang movie, but it is us talking about whether or not the Avatar Aang movie was a good Avatar The Last Airbender movie, specifically, with some of our thoughts on the end. So, just to introduce ourselves real quick, my name is Joshua. I'm the host of this series. I'm also a film educator and professional media maker. I'm here with my 2 co-hosts. The first one being...
I'm Joseph, or Homerman76, the bum of the group.
And the second?
I'm just some dude. My name's Adam.
Just some dude indeed. I can say that we're all very qualified Avatar Last Airbender fans. Like many of you who are watching this, we grew up with this show, and we believe this is kind of the pinnacle of American animated TV. In fact, in my classroom, the classroom where I teach film and media making in general, I have posters of all these different movies that I highly respect and recommend. The only TV series that is on this wall is Avatar Last Airbender, because it is a beautiful series. Now, with that in mind, there's a lot of aspects of Avatar Last Airbender that make it a beautiful series. And so with the revival taking place with the Avatar Aang movie, we have to ask the question of, did it do its job? Is it a spiritual successor through and through, or did it not? So I'll open up to my co-commentators here. Adam, Joseph, what is your very first thoughts in terms of having seen the movie? Did it do a good job? Did it do service to the beautiful series that we know?
It's a tough and rough take and all that, because part of it comes down to what you were saying about what does it mean to be like Avatar, but seeing as how it's adjacent to Avatar The Last Airbender, it only seems fitting to judge it based on Avatar The Last Airbender in comparison to other pieces of Avatar media like Korra, Seven Havens, or the Avatar Kyoshi comics and stuff like that. The way I see it, it's always been a big about the journey. It's this whole it's a story about that's where each part has a role to play, where it's just it's Aang's story, but it's also about Katara. It's also about Sokka. It's also about Zuko. Whether you're a villain or whether you're even a background character, there's usually almost never there's almost always something that's there for them, even if all it is a running gag.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I want to come back to that because I have a list of things that I think made Avatar what it was, or Last Airbender what it was. That's definitely one of the ones I agree with. Before we talk about that in depth, Adam, what is your general opinion of if the movie succeeded?
It isn't a good revival.
No, taking a stab. Okay. I can see
I
that.
think
Right out
that
of the
might be
gate.
an unpopular opinion. I think I've looked at some people talking about it online. A good video on it, I would say, is Hello Future Me. He's a pretty popular. He's a popular YouTube channel. He has a good video talking about it. It seems to be pretty positive overall. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad movie, but the best way I could describe it, and this is harsh, but it's my honest opinion. I would describe it as empty calories.
Okay.
It's and I agree that the most important part about Avatar to me is the characters and
Yeah.
focusing on the character development. And there is some of that in here, but there's too much stuff that gets in the way. And the movie's about 90 minutes long and it's just not enough time. And I think either they should have told a different story or two, they should have cut some aspects. But there's more I could say about that, but that's the overall my overall view on it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys are both in the same camp that the characters are very, very important to Avatar Last Airbender. And I'm actually in agreement. When I was brainstorming about whether I thought this movie did a good job by the series, there was 4 primary points that I thought that it had to have to be a successful Avatar Last Airbender revival. One of the biggest ones is that, as Joseph was pointing out, every single character has some sort of meaningful involvement and story that goes with them. And I think that's what makes the series so beautiful, is that it's a message about hope, about effort, loss, triumph, all those things in between, as told through the lens of like just a bunch of kids trying to save the world. But along this journey, they don't just use their powers to beat people up and save things. There's a lot of meaningful progress that happens not only for the main characters, but a lot of side characters. The first one I think about is when they go through the pass, I believe it's the Snake Pass, to get to Ba Sing Se. They have that couple that has the baby, and we want that couple to be safe. And we see them not just in the presence of Aang and his group, but we see a lot of what takes place with them. And we have stories like that all across, including our favorite man, the Cabbage Man, right?
It's a fun
so
running
I guess,
gag.
yeah. So that's our first question. And we'll debate it because I am in a mixed camp here. The question is, did the Avatar Aang movie do a good job with its core characters? And I'm going to take the claim that it did a good job with 2 or 3 characters and the rest were present. So
Which 2 or
go ahead.
3?
What do you guys think about that? So obviously Aang.
I would agree with that. I think it was. Yeah, I'll let you finish first. Sorry.
I will argue Aang had a meaningful story here. We can talk more about it in depth. I don't think it was perfect, but I thought it was really good. Katara was a meaningful character, even if she didn't have, let's say, growth, but I think that she was a meaningful support character. And then there was also the villain of the movie that I think was a meaningful character. And outside of that, everybody was fun to have, but you could in fact write them out of the movie and nothing would have changed because their problems apply to them and are solved by them, but do not intertwine with the general plot. What do you guys think?
So I think there's definitely some things to be said about like that. Like I feel, as you were kind of noting, like Sokka didn't do as enough ultimately. I think there was benefit to the fact that like his invention did come up as something that was of use, but at the same time, like that it was kind of like almost at the same time, it still was a little bit of a do nothing burger. Zuko would have been a great character to do more with because like he even brings it up at one point of it where it's just like, if anyone should have been in support of Aang, it was Zuko. Like, cause he starts the whole thing off with, oh, this is a great way for me to make right what my ancestors ruined. And then like, he's one of those who jumps on Aang for like, how could you risk all of our lives? And it's just like, I mean, is this really all that fair when you consider the entirety of the situation at hand? And I won't get too into Toph, on the other hand, I think is one of the few, is a weird situation where it's just like, I don't think Toph needed to be used any better than she actually was, because that's just, Toph is that character where it's just like, you don't need to do any more than to have her boast most of the time.
Agree and disagree. So
but
her character is generally defined by her like great capacity.
Oh yeah,
to do things. And I think they kind of demonstrated that because they had that scene where she's introduced into the movie where they right off the bat, they're like, I'm the greatest earthbender in the world. And it's like, I agree with you, Toph. And I'm like, great to see you back at it. But later in the movie, she does not do anything that makes me really feel that from her. And she has so many capacities that could have been more valuable that I think weren't used. And I think this goes with a lot of my argument for the characters in general, where I don't think they all have to have like a huge momentous story like Aang does. You can't fit that in the size of movie that they had. But the characters were not used in a way that the protagonist had to rely on them outside of Katara. Katara, obviously, MVP outside of Aang. Very, very important to the series, to the movie. But with Sokka, Zuko, Toph, all I needed was 2 or 3 moments where they were linchpins to Aang's success. But instead, they're kind of like, Aang's doing the real thing here, and they're just kind of trying to keep up and like take all the stragglers that were thrown their way for the sake of them being a part of the movie.
I do actually have a bit of a counterpoint though, as far as utilizing Katara. And this is something that'll like come up a little bit later when we get further into talking about Revival. But to just kind of like lay it out there initially, I don't think Katara was fully utilized in a way that like makes the most of it, because something that actually bugged me a lot watching throughout the movie was there were a lot of characters who went to Katara, Aang, especially Aang, who knows her struggles and pains, and went, you don't understand anything. You don't know what it's like to lose things. And it's just like, are you kidding me?
It was annoying. This
is the character. This is one of those characters who's lost a lot. You do not get to say that. Like the only because all of the characters in general have had a lot of experience with loss and all of that. And it's fine in like kind of in the moment of rage, but it's like, it bothered me that they never once kind of like brought up in a way where it's just like, Katara understands a little bit better than you're giving her credit for, which is like, there was never that moment to like kind of like apologize and reflect on the fact that like Katara doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
So I'll jump in here. I really think there are 1.5 interesting characters in this movie.
Okay.
Aang and Togha for the first half. I think Togha really falls off in the second half. And I think, and this is really the main problem. It was not enough time for them to really, if this was a TV show, they could have done a 2-episode special solely on Togha's backstory. Then I think I might have accepted things more with what they did. But they had to rush it through really fast. Like after Togha, I guess we're too late, but spoiler alert, by the way, for everyone listening. After Togha, does his air compression thing that reminds me of lightning, but for air, to the whole gang, that Team Avatar, he like goes to the Denied and then like, hey, who wants airbending, and it just goes through that so fast. And there's a lot of things like that where just at the end where it just zips through.
It does zip through.
And it's just not enough. I really think they could have cut the fat from this movie. So I think it was Taika or what? I'm mispronouncing.
Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi, yeah. Thor Ragnarok, love that movie.
Like, what was
Love
the
and
acid
Thunder,
trip
not
that
so
was
much.
his character?
Yeah, like, as fun as that was, that could have been cut from the movie, or it could have been
Yeah.
way earlier, I think. Because it's the most interesting part of this movie was the character of Aang and his relationship with Taga.
Yeah, I
But-
actually really agree with that.
yeah.
And that's one of the best parts about the movie, and part of why I think that they did like a B- tier job when it comes to the characters, in my opinion, because Aang was done well. I really enjoy Aang's relationship with Taga. Like, I didn't think there was something more for Aang to know about airbending, but when it was brought up that like Aang didn't know everything there was, it made 100% sense, because he was 10 when he like lost the ability to learn from other people. And so Taga was a really cool character to interact with that, and that added something. And that's actually one of my main points for something it did do well. As an Avatar The Last Airbender movie, Aang's story was progressed in a meaningful way. And this is one of the points I wanted to make for what makes a good revival in general, is a revival should always add to, not subtract from, the characters and how they previously were. And I think that was true, that nobody was subtracted from. Aang was added to, but nobody else was like fleshed out. So I do think Aang was done really well inside the movie.
One thing that I didn't think the movie needed, I don't think, I'm not saying it couldn't have never have worked. I'm just saying I don't think they had to go this direction. I don't think it needed the staff that gives airbending MacGuffin.
Oh, no.
Well,
okay. Actually, partial agreement, partial disagreement. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think Aang destroying the staff at the end, that's a powerful moment, right? It's actually kind of, well, I'll get into that later. I have some thoughts about how that might be kind of poetic for when we're talking about revivals in a sense. Yeah. But if I was the one writing the story, and I'm not a professional writer, I'm not saying it has to go this direction, but a direction that I think would have been led to less problems is I would have made the story more focused around, because there's an elephant in the room that we didn't talk about yet. We, as Avatar fans, we know that Korra exists, Legend of Korra, so we know he's not going to succeed because we've seen Korra. Yeah. So I think going in this path was it was not good. This is a better path I think they could have done. I think they could have focused on Katara and Aang's relationship and their struggle trying to have an airbending kid. And perhaps maybe Boomy and it was like, I forgot the girl's name. Kai.
Yeah,
the waterbending daughter.
Kaya.
What's that?
Kaya,
thank you. Maybe they're already born in this movie, and maybe they're facing some marriage struggles because he's like, I'm going to lose. There's going to be no airbenders. There's a lot of pressure on him, and then he finds Taga, and then but then he realizes that Taga came from this age of this air empire that was conquering everything. But now that he lives in this new age, maybe he's calmed down a bit. And he's living in Republic City, but then he sees some bad earthbenders in the city doing bad things, and that gives him PTSD or something. And that leads to I think that might have been more interesting. However, I think the reason why they didn't do that is because they wanted this movie to be in the movie theater, which unfortunately didn't happen except for 5 theaters, I think. And they wanted this big dramatic cinematic moments, and I really feel like that I've no way to prove this, but when watching it, I felt like that was their priority. Their priority was to make it more cinematic for the theater than
it's possible.
Having these big character moments, because the animation, amazing. I love the animation. And the character development. And when I say like, I do agree that Aang was done the best. But if I say Aang was done good, I think it could have been better. I think Aang was the most serviceable in this movie.
Well, let me put it this way.
It's nothing compared to It's like I think he has way more meaningful character development in the Storm episode of book 1 compared to this
Yeah.
movie.
Let me put it this way, though.
Anyway.
I think that when it comes to Aang, they did not detract from his character, his development before.
That's true.
I think that his struggle was something that was a logical next step in his personal life journey. And
Yeah, I
it
agree with
100% makes sense. And I think the way you're talking about like how you could implement it differently is a fine idea. But I like
have to be
the
that
core. I like the core contention for the movie, and I don't love the staff giving airbending, but I like the implications thematically. And so I don't think it's a great item, but I accept it for the thematic premise it brings to Aang's transformation of a character. Like he can bring back airbenders and then he gives that away. I think that's a fantastic premise in general. My biggest complaint, and this is actually going into my second claim for Last Airbender, and this is, by the way, out of my 4 points, I think they did a good job on 3 of them and kind of a mid-tier on one of them, the mid-tier being the character one. The only point that I think that they did a poor job on is the actual bending. So there are a couple of moments in the movie that I think are really good bending, where they use the martial arts that are characteristic to Avatar Last Airbender, where, by the way, Avatar Last Airbender is more than just having superpowers. It is a spiritually fused world where the spiritual worldview is intertwined with martial arts, and the martial arts is intertwined with the abilities. And the problem I saw is we had a couple of moments that had really cool martial arts, like when Aang is on the center of the temple getting the staff, using all 4 elements. I thought that the choreography there was good, but whenever there's a fight, people use the element, but I do not see concepts of martial arts in the way I'm used to. And for me, that brings it down in terms of being an Avatar Last Airbender movie.
It really felt Dragon Ball Z-esque.
I don't even think I would actually agree with that. I like because I feel like actually does Dragon Ball Z a bit of disservice in a way. But
well, I love Dragon Ball Z, but yeah.
No, I meant like
I thought it was a shonen,
but
like it felt like a shonen anime at the end. Like, why do they need to have like these superpowers that they shoot like these weird beams and stuff like that? Like, where did the bending and the martial arts go?
This isn't even my final form.
Yeah. What?
And it's a tough thing because like they have to have something that's difficult for the Avatar to overcome. I just think that introducing more superpowers and is not the way.
Yeah, I that was something that kind of like I was wondering about at one point, was like where one of the issues that kind of sometimes comes with these kind of revivals is it messes with the power scaling in a number of ways. Now, I don't necessarily think like the stuff that was with Taga was is necessarily bad, so long as like is utilized properly in, say, Avatar 7 Havens and all that. So like which is kind of like one of my points for like what is what makes good for a show revivals, like on top of like utilizing what you said about utilizing characters, right? Like the 2 things that I think need to happen in making a good revival is it needs to, one, respect the source material, which we already discussed. There's a lot of ways where it doesn't necessarily, like it respects it in a lot of ways. Like you got the cabbage salesman, you got the niche guy, the one guy who like gets overexcited, foams in the mouth, and collapses
foams
at the beginning of the movie. You've got some of Aang's stuff, but at the same time, like it doesn't respect a lot of the characters very well. It doesn't respect some that are past and everything like that. But at the same time, there also has one of the biggest factors is there has to be a reason for this revival to exist. One of like my favorite, I think like my benchmark for like excellence and stuff, like it doesn't have to reach this, but like one of my benchmarks for excellence with show revivals is Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods, where it introduced like it respected like where the material ended with like Dragon Ball Z at the end of the Buu saga, but at the same time like it incorporated new elements that like were a part of like the mystery of the world, where it's just like who sealed away Elder Kai, and then like you get like beer introduction of Beerus, and then on top of that it further creates intrigue for the series going forward in case they actually want to do more with the series and stuff. Like, so it revives the series in the fact that like Beerus just drops this bomb of like, there are many universes out there. It's like, well, shoot. That's a huge
I agree with
That'd
what
be
you're
a good
saying,
segue
like,
talking about revivals in general.
Yeah. It's because one of the hallmarks of being a good revival, and we already touched upon this, and you're saying it outright, is it should not only respect the source material, it should respect the characters and like have them have a meaningful progress and not detract from them, but they should have some sort of like world, meaningful world conducive reason that there is a continued story. And a lot of revivals do this wrong, where they have some sort of introduction of like, oh no, so-and-so lost their powers because we have to have something for them to struggle for. And I hate that. A really good example of this, even though it's not a revival, the classic Gohan fallacy, where it's like you go from, Cell Saga to Buu Saga, and it's like, why does Gohan suck now, even though he was supposed to be the pinnacle of fighting? Well, let me tell you, because writing needs it, and because he's apparently too lazy to fight anymore, and so like all that meaningful stuff before doesn't mean anything. But with Avatar, I do feel like Kaga was powerful in a way that I thought was a little overpowered, and I don't want to see continuously, but I was willing to accept because he did it in a way that still felt pretty elemental. So I was okay with that outside of the stupid staff.
Yep. One thing I actually one point I have like thinking about Taga, and this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with him as a revival. I feel like one thing they could have done better, actually it does work as a revival thing, where it's just like it would have worked better if they had worked off of the idea that Sonon was actually a fake avatar, instead of like revealing that like, oh, well, no, it's just an avatar that just none of the avatars could actually connect with to figure out for whatever, because of plot reasons. And it's like, I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, she didn't like, she had a lot of regrets and among other reasons, and that's why she didn't connect with the other avatars. But like, it would have been a little bit more interesting, like, because Taga didn't have to be the villain outside of just a reason for him to not exist by the time of Korra.
You just gave me another idea, which this would run into a lot of plot issues, but it could justify the means. And that is, we talked about this a little bit before, but what if Sono was an evil avatar, right?
Yeah, I would actually have an issue with that. So I don't think we should delve into speculation.
Talking about not respecting the source material
here. We're just talking about whether Avatar Aang did a good job.
Well, but here's the thing. There's other possibilities.
Yeah.
Let's imagine an Avatar v Avatar fight somehow.
We've seen that. And nobody liked it in Korra.
Yeah. So the problem here is like that the evil Avatar
that was
falls
spirit
into this
spirit fight.
So like it falls into the same problem that we were just talking about, where it's just like it doesn't respect the lore enough if they were to go that direction. So you run into a lot of the same problems, except in fact, even worse. Like at least this one still works with the original lore of the series.
Yeah.
You would have the idea of an evil avatar would throw a lot of things on its head in terms of like what was established in Korra.
Yeah, I actually want to use that as a jumping point to one of the reasons that I think this movie did a generally good job, which, by the way, I didn't mention it earlier. I would give this movie a B, maybe B plus at the most, for how good it did in terms of being an Avatar Last Airbender movie. But the one thing I think it did really well is it did a phenomenal job connecting the stories between Last Airbender and Korra and building the world in small but meaningful ways. And I want to hear what you guys think, but before you do, here's my reason. So namely the focus on the city and Republic City, and the focus on the Lion Turtles. So the Republic City, we got to see its intermediate period, which is a great connection between Last Airbender and Korra. And so that's fine and dandy and everything. And there was really good nods to both ends of that story. But the one that I think it did the best was how it discussed the Lion Turtles, because there's this huge problem between Last Airbender series and Korra series, where the Lion Turtles in Last Airbender were really awesome but mysterious, and there's one that just seems to be there to help Aang. And then in Korra, it's like, okay, the Lion Turtles are the source of bending, which contradicts Last Airbender, which said that people learn bending from the animals and like the sky bison or the
I disagree with
moles, or the dragons.
I don't think it's contradictory at all.
But what it does do really well with the movie is we see why Lion Turtles are no longer around, because they met their ending resting place. They're given the respect that they are due by having immense spiritual power in that area. And it makes a nod not only to the Lion Turtles having given bending in the past, but the same person who said that the Lion Turtles gave bending also said that the Sky Bison taught humans bending. And so both are validated. And so I think that the world building is deepened, and for that I give large credit to the movie.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought along the lines of like the turtles just provided humans with the means and energy for it, and then like the Sky Bison and like other stuff, like the original masters of those elements are just like where humans learn to actually get better with their elements.
Which is another reason why I don't like the Denied, because all of a sudden they're like overpowering Team Avatar. Yeah. But because like even in Korra, you can see Wong learning from a dragon, learning how to control his fire. But that's off topic for about the revivals.
Well, I actually think it is partially on topic
of
because
Denied, one point I do actually like you kind of brought up it, and one of the things that does actually cause me issues as far as like this movie as a revival and like a element in the Avatar lore and everything is the Denied, where it's just like,
yeah.
So you have this group of non-benders who are angry about the fact that like non-benders who don't have power and all that, and so like there's two problems I run into that, where it's just like the first problem is that like we already saw in the original series a number of people who like Sokka, Suki, Ty Lee, etc., who didn't ever had any amount of bending, who actually were a significant part of the war, who were doing a lot of things. So like even fresh off of the war, not only like one, you've got a bunch of non-benders who are strong, and two, you've already like it's not like the non-benders were the only ones who were being oppressed. Like, why are the Denied so against benders in general, when it was specifically the firebenders who were. And the second problem I have is that like it leads into Korra, where it's just like, so you're telling me after like seeing this group with the Denied and all of those issues that Team Avatar did nothing to deal with the cycle of oppression that comes with that, such to the point that by the time of Korra, they have a whole revolution of like non-benders who are just mad that the benders of various elements exist. Like it's just it creates a lot of problems, because it means that like Avatar that Aang ignored a really problematic part of their world. And it also kind of like is problematic because we're after it kind of like how like all of the kids that Sokka was talking about were just like, oh yeah, right, as if anyone without bending could have helped the Avatar, and it's also like, and like it's a funny joke at the time, but then you realize that the war wasn't that long ago. The fact that people are already in this state of mind is actually kind of a concerning aspect of like showing that it just creates a lot of like weirdness for me, where it's just like, you consider all things considered, you really think that Aang and Co did this bad of a job of dropping the ball this way?
Yeah, I didn't like the Denied in the movie.
So I don't like the Denied either, but my problem is more with the execution than the lore. I agree mostly with what you're saying, where the Denied, it's kind of like Amon and his group were extremely good, like in terms of a villain group. It's really too bad that Amon couldn't have been like a 3-series villain for Korra. It would have been a much better series. But and somebody can disagree with me, that's fine. But the group was really well established for why they had so much animosity towards bending. And it was an evolved thing that was kind of in the shadows. And so it wasn't even like really on top of the mind of people until the conflict really came to a head. So the Denied are in fact like a acceptable precursor to Amon and his group, save for the fact that they ride on the coattails of what was established for Amon and his group. There's no, in terms of execution, there's no building up for them. The only glimpse of like why they are so mad is the fact that like, the leader of the group, who by the way is so comedically a background character that like her eyeshadow tells me she's the leader of the villain group, and that's the only reason that I know. But she pins the like nice girl who becomes I don't know, I guess no spoilers, but the nice girl of the group against the wall, and she's like, remember when like your family was lost in the war and like because you didn't have any power? And it's like, well, yeah, the war that the Avatar himself, saved everybody from. Anyways,
Bender's lost too.
People. Like,
so anyways,
it goes back to
my point is like,
oh, sorry.
My point is more that they fit somewhat within the universe, but if Amon and his group did not exist, they would make zero sense because they had zero presence as a villain group. So that's a problem with execution more than it being an Avatar Last Airbender problem. They didn't really tie it together and
they
intertwine
didn't need to
it
be in
with
this movie.
Yeah.
They could have been in a different movie.
They were so background of a villain group that they themselves were a MacGuffin.
Yeah, they were.
I think they were only there so the Team Avatar could fight someone at the end. But I'd rather have like Togga have a frozen army underneath the mountain that he like summons from the ashes. I'd rather have that. Which I still don't think would be that good. But I'd rather have that than the Denied.
Yeah. So good to come bring it back though. So we've talked a lot about the Avatar Last Airbender and whether or not the Aang movie meets a lot of what it should have been meeting to be a revival. I'm going to recap the ones we've talked about so far and then bring up one or two last ideas. So we've talked about how what makes Avatar so good is the world is deeply martial arts, spiritually focused, and we retained some of that, but not enough, and that was a problem with the movie. B, Avatar Last Airbender is really good because all the characters have meaningful growth, roles in the story, and I didn't mention this before, but they are all positively, moralistically inclined, which I think Aang did uphold, but nobody else got to really be meaningful as a character outside of Aang and potentially Katara. So that's one other thing that we talked about. We talked about the bending and how, like I said before, the bending was kind of, but not fully like met and how it should have been. But the one thing I do want to give it credit for before we move on to general revival topics, as long as that's okay with you guys, the last thing I will give it credit for, and the one reason I think the characters had a good place in this movie, is Avatar: The Last Airbender has phenomenal banter. And the movie did that.
I agree.
Although
The
I
banter
do
was good.
have one point where it's just like I think the banter did have one caveat where it actually backfired horribly. And that was in the moment where everybody was mad at Aang for not wanting to stop going through the storm. And this is actually one of the reasons where the denied is kind of like a bit of a problem, because if it was something like, say, they had a map and they were going there and just like, Aang, you're risking our lives for nothing. Why are, like, that'd be one thing. But it's just like, for instance, like Zuko, he was big on this whole thing of like, I can redeem what my ancestors did. But then he's just like, he's also one of those people like, Aang, what the heck, man? And it's just, and also, and like, I don't feel like it happened as naturally as it was, because one of the other big things about the Avatar series is that, like, yeah, this group had their rough patches, but like once they got through them, the group was always there for each other. They always had their back for each other. They were always willing to do things for each other. And I feel like that moment was just very out of character for them, where they all just wanted to be like, Aang, you're a terrible leader. How dare you have us go through the storm, even though the eye of the storm is the safest place and all that. We're just like, turning around actually is one of the more dangerous things they could have been doing in that situation. Among other things, where it's just like, it's not just Aang wants to do this. This is just the smart choice to make, is to just keep going at this point. And
yeah, but I do want to, cut there that, well, I agree that section has a little bit of forced nature to it. What I mean by banter is I'm not talking about the characters disagreeing. I'm just talking about like humorous banter in the like pause moments of the action and the plot beats.
Oh, I know. I just
just-
meant that, like, I felt like that
Like,
moment was
someone confirm
intended to like riff off of that idea, but they did executed it very poorly. That's just all I meant. That's where I was like saying.
But I will say that when the group was bantering together, I felt like it was an Avatar: Last Airbender banter. Like, it wasn't
it was good.
forced. It was funny. I felt like the character interactions were good.
tough.
So though the characters didn't feel as meaningful, I did feel like there was some genuine, like, fun journey moments, and I also like that. So, in conclusion, for being Avatar: The Last Airbender revival, I personally give the movie a B myself.
So for me, I would look at it from, if I'm gonna go off of a revival, because of a lot of when it had its highs. And the highs were high, but the lows were just a little too low. So as a revival, I'd give it kind of a C. But as a movie, as a standalone movie, I have to clear this up. I would say this was actually a good and enjoyable movie. And the point that I would give it at least a B plus as a standalone movie, because just like removed from the rest of the series, I did have a lot of fun. I did enjoy it, even if it wasn't a perfect movie by any means. It's just, as a continuation of Avatar, it didn't make me feel like I've reinvigorated and gung-ho for the next of the series. It just was like, I enjoyed it. This was a great reminder of my childhood, but I'm also not necessarily excited for where they're going.
What rank would you give it, Adam?
It sure was a movie. It sure was a movie, and it exists, and it is a movie you can watch. You can see the movie. Yeah, I would give it a C. But the animation, A+.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Animation, A+. Like, amazing animation. I think it's really sad. It's kind of sad to me that it didn't come out in the theaters, because I think it would have made the movie more enjoyable, but I probably still would have come back disappointed in other aspects.
Yeah, that is actually kind of a funny thing to me, where it's just like, I think I would have enjoyed the movie more if I had seen it in theaters, which is hilarious for something that I just gave a C rank from the Revival Spirit series. But but that's because that the as you said at one point, the cinematography of that movie was on a level that did bring it closer to a bit of an A, to the point that like if you'd seen it in theaters, it would have been worth the payment to see it in theaters. Oh, yeah. But because of everything, it just...
Yes, Josh?
Here's a thought that I want to finish off with before we transition into the general idea of what makes a good revival. And we kind of give you a lot... Well, yeah, so here's the thought, is being a pure revival where it's been multiple decades since the series ended, and we are now, I'm pretty sure multiple decades, maybe a decade and a half, I don't know. Anyways, it's been a long time. Being a pure revival, they had a lot that they had to include for people to be satisfied. For example, I Google searched why Suki was not in the movie just so I can understand. And if I did that for Suki, like, how upset would people be if the other characters were not there? So they didn't do the best with them as they could have, but I also understand that they had to have them for it to be an acceptable revival movie. Now, that being said, they had to fit so much into this movie that I would love to have more movies made by them that are anthologies for each of the characters. My reason is because as an Avatar Last Airbender fan, they did not detract from any of the characters. It was not perfect, but I felt like I got enough additions to things I loved about the series that I want to see more. And if they did more like sequels to this revival movie, they would have more free reign to focus really in depth on just one or two characters per movie. And I think that would solve a lot of the problems, because they have demonstrated to me through this movie that they at least understand most of the heart and soul of Avatar, but they could refine a lot of it and go more in depth with the characters. And if they did so, I would love to see more.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it, but I'm okay talking about revivals in general. Moving on. I'm the older I get, the more cranky I get, the less I believe. And
just make sure.
I'm more in the mindset of I will doubt. So I'm going to be completely honest. I was listening to some reviews, and I wasn't going to watch this movie, but because of this podcast, I watched the movie. So I'm more in the stage now where I have the original. I love the original. I showed it to my kids earlier this year. I'll always have that. I'm totally willing. I'm at peace if that is all we get. However, I would love to be proven wrong, and it would be great to get more. I would love for them to prove me wrong and then come up with a good movie, because the creators, they can do whatever they want. I have no authority whether they should make more or not make more Avatar movies. But I am. This movie didn't make me excited for anything else, because it made me feel that they were focused too much on the plot devices and the power levels. But however, maybe that's not really what they wanted to do. I don't know. All I can say is it didn't drive me with a lot of confidence, but that's just me.
The thing that would make me potentially excited is if they did eventually do that one Zuko movie that
which they
was
canceled,
supposed to have come
apparently.
out last year. But
Yeah.
that
Which
right
would've-
now,
I would've
that's
loved
about like where I'm at, where it's just like Avatar 7 Havens. They haven't done enough to make break past the fact that I just can't handle post-apocalyptic worlds.
Yeah, that's gonna be rough.
Just
It makes you feel like all the good that you succeeded from before is for naught.
Of course, though, I do like the one point they made, which is that like a lot of that when you watch the ending of Korra, you have to wonder, like, did this really make the world better? And Seven Havens kind of proves, no, it didn't.
Yeah,
Yep.
Korra's a mess.
Yeah.
But that's another discussion for another day. I actually wanted to say, I think we're at a great stopping point. I know I said that we were going to do the discussion on what makes a good revival series in general, but there was so much to talk about with the Avatar Aang movie that I would love to do a part 2 for this podcast where we talk about the what makes a good revival in general. And I know we all have some really good prepared ideas. So if you enjoyed our discussion about revivals on Avatar Last Airbender, join us next time for a part 2 to our series. Do you guys have any last concluding thoughts you'd like to do?
Only thing I'd like to say is if any of you out there want us to talk about something in specific regarding revivals next time, so bring something to our attention, put it down in the comments. We'd love to see some of your thoughts before going into this part 2.
Tell me how wrong I am in the comments. And
or if he's the only right one, I guess.
Yeah, or tell me how right I am.
Yeah. And here's my last request. So we talked about what we think made Avatar Last Airbender what it is and what a revival would need to hit for that to be the case. I'd love to hear what like audience members thinks about that. Like, what is it about Last Airbender that is good? Just to remind you of what we had to say, and as a synopsis for the whole episode, we have that there is always a deep lore that is contributing to the series. There is a fundamentally, spiritually, martial arts focused way to the power system that feels very one with nature and the viewpoints that martial arts bring. We also think that characters from the Avatar Last Airbender series need to have a lot of depth, a lot of purpose, and a lot of role to the series, no matter who they are, as well as they need to be morally ambitious, or in other words, seeking to do the best good they can, even when they come up short. And as a fun one, Avatar Last Airbender is also hallmarked by its witty, funny banter between the characters. And if you take all those elements and bring all the same world and characters to it, we think that you'd capture most of what Avatar Last Airbender is. But let us know what you think in the comments below. What should Airbender have to be Last Airbender? With that being said, we'll see you in the next episode for talking about revivals in general. Until then, see ya.